Hi. So I promised you guys a little story time. Well, we knew that my serpentine belt on my van was going to give. We had heard the noise for a while and we just didn't know exactly when. And my brother had ordered one from California, and it actually got shipped to Tromso, but it got there after I had already left, and then it got shipped back to my brother, which to his dismay he had to pay for shipping again, as it was a Christmas present to me. And he resent it to my friend's house in Foska, Norway. Hey. And so we were waiting on that, but we thought we had more time. And then when I was in a small town of 13 people in Unstad, Norway, I think I was just scooting my van forward to get a little more flat, and I heard a pop, and my heat just gave out while I was moving it, and I instantly knew, because I knew that was tied to the engine belt. And then so I texted Ivar, and he was pretty certain that was the issue. And then in the morning I didn't really know the severity, and I think I was going to move it to the surf shop so I could at least have Wi-Fi and access to the water, because it was on the beach. And when I tried to move it, I had absolutely no power steering, and yeah, it was pretty much dead stuck. And then we didn't really know if it was the belt that had popped or the bearing that had gave out, so a couple people helped me open it up and look at it. And when we did, the bearing just kind of fell out with all the nuts and bolts kind of everywhere.
But it's only this one that's broken.
Okay, so this is, and they just kind of tugged on the serpentine belt, and it just fell out like a snake. It was completely detached. And the issue was that they don't make serpentine belts that big in Europe. We tried. This old man came knocking, and at a really weird time, if I remember correctly, and he didn't speak any English, and it was a very kind of inconsistent conversation. And later on, this really young, pretty blonde girl knocked on my van, and she said she had heard that I ran out of dog food, and I was like, yeah, I have. And she came with a bag of dog food, which I was really grateful for, because before I had gone door to door kind of seeing if anyone had dog food, and I was giving them eggs. And anyways, she asked if I could get in the car with her, and I was like, okay, yeah, and I was just about to go surfing, and I was in my wetsuit, so I was like, yeah, let me just change, and just full trust, got in the car with her. So that's all new. I feel like such a tourist.
But you kind of have to be.
I know, it's so funny. And she drove me to that old man's house, and I was like, oh, okay, so I kind of bridged the gap, and he had like 12 serpentine belts just kind of laying on the hood of his car. And I was like, oh, okay, I get what you were trying to say earlier. And but none of them fit. And so I was kind of stuck there until my brother's part, which was, I think at the time it was like a week, but I think the train was delayed from Oslo to the north. And so we didn't know how long it was actually going to take. So I was kind of just stuck there. And the bearing was the bigger issue because we hadn't even ordered that yet. And they did not make those in Norway at all. And so we got kind of a tip to go to the shipping yard in Ballstad and ask if they could make the like kind of create it out of the place where they make parts for boats. And so we brought the bad bearing, or our intention was to bring the bad bearing. And then the story kind of took a turn because so my original intention was to just wait the allotted time and just kind of surf, and because I was teaching myself how to Arctic surf, and I got some used gear, and I was just kind of going. It was kind of keeping me sane, going in the morning and the evening, and then kind of working midday on the van and taking the dogs out. and then when I realized how long it was gonna take and how I couldn't charge my battery because the belt around the engine and turning it on and keeping it running is what charged the battery. So when I realized that that wasn't possible without the belt on the engine at all, I realized my van was gonna die very quickly, and it did. And I lost heat, electricity, everything, and it became very frigid and terrible, especially after surfing in the van. So there was this other older man in the village that came over and offered his help. And I had gotten a few warnings from this guy, or about this guy, and that he could be kind of pushy towards like young women. And he was cool to me though. He took me to get groceries, and so I was like, okay, as long as I keep my boundaries, like it should be okay. And he called me at like 6 in the morning after the grocery trip and said that he had ordered a couple belts for me. And I was like, oh, I was like, how much was it? Because like shipping is a lot in Norway. And I was like, I thought we were, because our original plans were gonna go shop to shop and see if they had anything for any of the big trucks, like the transport trucks, to see if anything could fit. And because I got a tip that there might be something big enough that we could stretch. And so that was my cheapest, best option, and I wanted to try that first. Our other idea was that while we got the bearing made, if my brother's serpentine belt would come, so we wouldn't even have to worry about getting a belt. So I wasn't exactly keen on him ordering a bunch of belts and wanting some money from me for it and having to pay a lot of extra money without asking me. So I asked what the return fee was on that, and he was like, oh, no problem, like we could easily just return it, it will be no big deal. So I was like, oh, okay, so if everything comes before then we can just return it. And he was like, yeah, no big deal. And I was like, okay, cool. And then this guy started coming to my van kind of late at night, and like really late at night, like midnight or 1 a.m. when I was just kind of hanging out by myself or trying to sleep, and knocking and just kind of staying really late. And he's like in his like 70s, like, and then he came the next morning and he kind of demanded that he tow my van to his driveway and I start staying the night there. And I was like, no, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Like, I like staying in the surfer's lot, because I can easily surf, and like I've made some like van life friends here. And he got really mad, and while I was out surfing, he took the old bearing that we needed to go to the shipping yard with and get a new one made, which we were planning on doing the following day. And he took it to his house. out of my van. He took tools and like removed it on his own while I was surfing, and he took it to his house, and we found it removed. And when we were trying, because our plan was to remove it after I finished surfing, me and this other guy who was surfing, and we found it removed, and I texted him and I asked him if he had done it, and he said yes. And I said, okay, well, I'm coming to get it, that's my property. And he said if I came on his property to get my bearing, that he would shoot me. And I have that text message. And so, after that message, a couple of the boys that I was surfing with were like, okay, don't go over there. We're gonna go over there and we're gonna get the bearing back. And don't worry about this guy. We'll figure out your van on our own. And I was like, okay, guys, good luck. And they went over there, and I guess they had knocked on his door and asked for the bearing back. And I was waiting in the surf shop, charging some things since I didn't have electricity anymore. And I guess they had knocked on the door and asked for the bearing back. The guy said no. They were stern about it. They said, hey, this is her property, like, we will get the cops involved, like, you must give her this back. The guy said no and got quite aggressive and pinned up my friend Truls against his barn, and the other guy stepped in and pushed him off. It was bad and it was physical. And then the guys came back to the surf shop and they said, no dice, I'm sorry, but I don't think you're gonna get this bearing. And then immediately after, the woman who owned the surf shop came in and just started yelling at those three boys who were Norwegian, in Norwegian. So I don't know what's going on. And I'm just kind of sitting there, and then she looks at me and she says, and you pack up your stuff, get out of here, you are not welcome in here. Ever since you and your van got stuck, it's been nothing but chaos, and now you roped them into your chaotic life, and there's been nothing but trouble. And she's been a longtime friend of that older man who's a local, and I guess he had called her after the boys went over to his house and said that her surf shop business has been drawing a lot of weird young kids into the town, and she basically blamed the entire incident on me and my van being stuck, and she banned me permanently from the surf shop. And so now I wasn't allowed to use the Wi-Fi there, or fill my water, or use the shower after surfing while I was stuck. And she went so far as to call all of the Airbnbs and the local businesses in the area and say that that she had influence over, and tell them to ban me too. And she owned some of the Airbnbs and the cottages in that neighborhood that led to the beach, and the guests there I had become friends with. What? Yeah. Not everything has to have weed.
It doesn't, but
You can find some that way. You don't want to come from the front.
Because you're like opposing
the
the
boat.
dad?
You want to come kind of from the side, you know?
Like
and
asking permission?
asking permission. And they will actually like grant you permission to swim with them. And they're like, oh, okay, that's interesting, you know?
And then I heard once they do grant you permission, like they'll even let the kids like come play and splash around if you get that permission. which is I want that
But
moment.
I've never been there. I was reading.
And they were letting me come shower and use the warm up and use the sauna. And she called all the guests and said that if she catches any of them letting me inside, that they would be kicked out and they would not be refunded. So it was basically on neighborhood watch that nobody was allowed to enter. But luckily, everyone was really cool, and they were bringing me and the local surfer guys food at like midnight. And ended up being able to talk to the local guy, and face to face, me and him, none of the boys, and I got my bearing back. And me and Truls went to the shipping yard and got a new bearing made. They did it within an hour. It was insane. They basically did the impossible.
Sånn. Ja.
For de går jo inn i
Ja. Nei, herregud.
Ja. 1625. Det er med moms og alt.
And made a car part out of shipping parts, and it worked flawlessly. And we were able to find a belt that fit and squeeze it over my engine.
That's it, yeah.
But this didn't happen for a few days, and there was a few days there where I didn't have electricity or heat, and I was pretty frigid after surfing. And Truls ended up calling one of his college friends in a few towns over in Lofton, and they housed me for a few days. And Truls drove me. We brought the dogs. We abandoned the van. We had one of the young guys working at the surf shop watch it, because apparently the older local guy had gotten mad at someone for staying in the lot too long before and used his tractor and moved it off the property. So we were trying to make sure that didn't happen again. And yeah, it was a lot. But and then, yeah, when we finally got the part in, we came back, and actually, I stayed at the college boys for a few days, and then this local fisherman took me in, and I stayed with him. And that's how I met the local fisherman that whose boat we're using for the film project I'm working on. And he's actually the one that figured out how to wrap the serpentine belt correctly around my engine and actually got my van moving again, which was fantastic. Yeah. It was quite the abrasion between the surfers and the locals for a little bit there. There was also a moment in the midst of all of this where my big dog, he's an Alaskan Husky, and he's a mix. There's kind of a mountainous region behind the beach at Unstad, and I was letting them run around because we'd been trapped for so many days, and he just and he found a fresh carcass of a sea eagle. And
let me see. Is that an eagle? I think homie just found an eagle. You know what? We do have time for this.
I couldn't believe it, like a full sea eagle, and it must have gotten in a fight or something in the air because there was no blood, nothing that I could see, and it was just full and just in all its glory, and it had just fallen from the sky. And I was trying to preserve it or bury it or something, and I and because I don't know, I wanted the feathers, I wanted the foot was as big as my hand, and I was basically wrestling him for it, and just so I was already this weird local girl stuck that had already caused so many issues. Now I'm wrestling my dog for this full-grown eagle, which already looked so bad because it probably looked like he killed it, which he did not. And to spite me, he ate the whole thing whole. He basically just swallowed it whole, and he left one wing, which I tried to save, and then he left me one foot, which I saved for a long time. I dried it out on my windshield, which I was told was not a very welcoming look for a long time. And I have a photo, I'll attach the photo, and I left it on my windshield while the van was stuck, trying to dry it out, and I wasn't trying to be weird, I was just trying to dry it out, and but I was going to keep that, but when we got our first orca call, we were out on the water for like 6-7 hours, and the dogs are fine. They have AC, they have heat, they have queen-size bed, they have food, they have water, they have fans, but they were in the van for quite a bit. I had already hiked them, but that was a long day, and when I came back, they had stolen my eagle foot. Alas. I need you to know that I'm driving out of Unstad right now.